Dr. Saab is not here. I don't know how and where this controversy started from, but obviously there are very few people who've read this book. I don't think anybody has read this book. And I don't want to quote from the book because my friend Yasho will be doing a reading of the book. But somebody has picked up one paragraph from page 208 and are quoting it all wrong because English is a difficult language to understand. So this book is not about that one paragraph, because you should read what comes before that on the same page and what comes after that on the same page, and then carry on with the story. And if you come to the last page, you'll understand what this story is all about. It's about a great man. I've said the tallest leader of Kashmir, one of the tallest leaders of the country, and my friend sitting here, Prabhat, corrected me. When I told him about the book, he said, "Sir, you need to get serious. He's one of the tallest leaders of the world." And I go along with Prabhat. Thank you for correcting me, Prabhat, because Dr. Saab is a legend. Whatever anybody might say, this will not change. And before I come to the end of that, there is one other thing. There's a little epigraph in the book, apart from the dedication. And it's, I've quoted the great man, Vaidi Gundevia, whom I never had the good fortune of knowing or meeting. But our vice president here would know him. Manisa would know him. And he says, the sands are running out. Time is on nobody's side. We need to move on. And we need to move on with Pakistan. I don't know how many people will agree with me, but I've said this umpteen times, and I will continue to say it, that we must move forward with Pakistan. Coming back to Dr. Saab, because it has to end with Dr. Saab. किसी ने कहा कि हम रहें या ना रहें, ये रिश्ता तो रहेगा. हमारे घर से ये रिश्ता नहीं निकलने वाला. और मेरी बहन आज है नहीं यहाँ, शी इज बेड रिटन, बट उसके घर से भी ये रिश्ता नहीं निकलने वाला. ये बहुत गूढ़ा रिश्ता है, कोई कुछ भी कहे. और डॉक्टर साहब कहा करते थे, पहले मैं बरखा को कोट करूंगा. मैं जब ये किताब लिख रहा था तो मैंने बरखा से कहा कि गिव मी अ कोट. शी सेड he is the last of the Zinda Dil politicians. And I've quoted Barkha. Now I'll end with what Dr. Saab used to say frequently. Zindagi जिंदा दिली का नाम है, मुर्दे क्या जिया करते हैं. Thank you very much.
We will now formally unveil the book, for which we'd like to ask Mrs. Ansari to please join us on stage. I'd also like to request Mr. Gautam Sabharwal and Mr. Yashovardhan Azad to please join us on stage to release the book. It cannot happen without all of you.
May I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I forgot to, sorry, apologies. I forgot to mention one thing, that our chief guest is missing. He was a little under the weather and involved in deep arbitration. So I was asked, Swati said to me last night when the letter came, that who's the substitute? For Kashmir, I never need a substitute. So the chief guest today is Kashmir.
Yes, yes, please, please,
No, you're. I'll get it all. Salman ji, thank you very much.
Such a wonderful person. How could I not come? Such a wonderful person. How could I not come?
Thanks, Gautam.
May I please felicitate you all with some flowers? I'd now like to request.
Very much. Thank you. Swati, what else do you want me to say? Yeah, there has been this unfortunate controversy in the last.
Dr. Ansari Saab, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the fifth book of A.S. Dulat, that is one before the sixth, The Man Refuses to Retire, is a moving account of his times with Dr. Abdullah, Farooq Abdullah, in the backdrop of the developments in Kashmir. According to him, Dr. Abdullah is definitely the tallest leader of Kashmir. Some may question this assessment, but you have to go through the narrative of this most acclaimed expert of Kashmir in this book. The book, as he also says, is a nod to Kashmir and Kashmiris. His guru, M.K. Narayanan, who was our IB chief, also says in his foreword, this is a fascinating account written by one who is not merely an expert, but more importantly, whose emotional attachment to Kashmir and Dr. Abdullah is unrivaled. But more importantly, what he says is that few accounts of similar nature across the world would favorably compare with this eponymous account of Mr. Dulat. As Dulat reminisces from that winter of October 87, when he joined as the IB chief of J&K, to the time of winter in 2024, when Omar Abdullah was taking oath as the chief minister, under the watch of Dr. Sahib, an emotional Dr. Sahib, with a hint of tears in his eyes, in the last 38 years, he has never left Kashmir. And so this is a fascinating account of a man who has Kashmir in his blood. And there is one thing, one article of faith, which runs through the entire book and all the books which he has written so far. The theme is no candles, no guns, only talks for any kind of resolution in Kashmir. Allow me to read the preface which sums it all. मैं अभी मुंह में जुबान रखता हूं, कोई पूछे कि मुद्दा क्या है. गालिब शुरुआत इससे की है. This is not a biography, but a memoir of my times with Dr. Sahib. A biography requires detailed research, and many books have been written on Farooq Abdullah. Real answers, in my view, come from conversation, speaking, listening, watching. This is my story of my knowledge of Farooq Abdullah. Now, I have never ventured an interview with Dr. Sahib. I have listened instead to him and those around him for close to 37 years without ever attempting to pry into his privacy or peep into his bedroom. A few years ago, during a dinner at KM Singh's house, inevitably the discussion centered on Kashmir. I was telling KM, Narayanan was responsible for sending me to Kashmir, and just at that moment, MK Narayanan walked in. Having overheard my remark, he looked at me and asked, "Are you complaining?" I said, "Not at all. How can I complain? Kashmir has made me all that I am. There would never have been a book on Kashmir, least of all this one. Even thinking of writing this story has been far from easy. Kashmiris are myriad-minded, and yet, if it were not for its quality, this book would be meaningless." When I began thinking of writing this book, I talked it over with Dr. Sahib. In fact, we spoke about it umpteen times. He never said no, but there was never a clear yes too. Until the summer of 2024, when I told him that I had finally begun writing it, and he said, "Karuna, go ahead." It was a response typical of the man. Dr. Sahib could be both reticent and forthcoming depending on the time, place, and his mood. That is why, rather than a biography, I like to think of this as a story. One that has been waiting to be told ever since I first met him in the winter of 1987. In October that year, I received a call from my friend and former colleague M.K. Ratindran, who was at the IB headquarters in Delhi. I was posted in Bhopal at that time and wasn't particularly expecting that call. "How would you react to a posting in Srinagar?" Ratindran asked without preamble. I was considerably taken aback, not to mention slightly nervous at the prospect. The very first time I heard of Farooq Abdullah was when he entered into a political accord with Rajiv Gandhi in December '86. At that time, I was on an assignment as a security officer for a presidential visit to Belgrade, the capital of erstwhile Yugoslavia. One morning, Ramesh Bhandari, the secretary traveling with us, excitedly brought Gyani Zail Singh, who was then the President of India, a copy of Times of India. He exclaimed, "Dekho Gyani ji, ki khabar aayi hai." The great news was, of course, the signing of the accord between Farooq and Rajiv. In the corridors of power in New Delhi, this was an idea that had been floating around for a while. Rajiv had long wanted his own man in Kashmir, a man who shared his vision of politics. Farooq was ideal for the task, given how close the Abdullahs and Gandhis had always been. Gyaniji responded to news of his accord with his typical fatalism. "This is the beginning of the end of Farooq Abdullah," he said. But like many others who have tried to estimate where Farooq stands on the great political chessboard, that is Kashmir, he was wrong. Nobody can ever predict the end of Farooq Abdullah, except for the man himself. That's the preface which I was supposed to read, but I will read you one more para in view of the controversy which Mr. Dulat mentioned just now. And I will read the end, the last para, which again sums it up. He who comes must, of course, go. After a while, remembrance also slowly fades. But what remains is greatness. The great man's saga will not end in a whimper, because Farooq is not an ordinary man. Delhi cannot afford to give up on Farooq, because without the singer, the song of Kashmir is not complete. So here's the master spy in his Kashmiri colors, standing tall and erect like a poplar tree in the valley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Azad. And now over to you, Veer, for the conversation.
Is this working? Can you hear me? You can probably hear us anyway. You can hear me now?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, I think we're okay. Well, thank you all for coming. I don't think I've ever been in a room so full of spies in my life, but it's a good feeling to see so many spies, ex-spies, diplomats, and of course the media. So, Mr. Dulat, let me just say, first of all, you're looking very well for a man who's been the victim of a social media mugging.
Yes, yes, yes. You know, when this story first broke, I was disturbed. I was also a little hurt, but then I slept over it. And the last 2 days I've been laughing, and I haven't stopped laughing. So I'll continue to laugh.
If you remember, I came to interview you just when the controversy had broken, and more than being upset or anything, you were just so surprised that anyone could have misinterpreted the book so completely.
That's right, I was surprised. As I said, that first day was a little difficult, but we live with these things.
I suppose you've seen worse in your career. But just for the record, because I see a large number of cameras and all of that, let's put this once and for all on the record. You say at one stage in the book, and this has been quoted, that Farooq Abdullah and Omar Abdullah went to meet Narendra Modi. We don't know what happened. This has been interpreted by many people as your way of saying that they did a deal on the quiet. Would you like to clarify that?
Yeah, sure. I really don't know what transpired. I did ask Dr. Saab, and I asked Umar as well. And they said, we were told nothing at all. And while writing this book, I again asked Dr. Saab. He said, "Bhai, मैं भूल रहा हूँ, आप उमर से पूछ लो." But the response I got from both father and son was that they had been told nothing. So it's got nothing to do what people are saying today. You know, it's a lot of rubbish. That's all I can say.
Okay. The second bit that I think people have seized on, the real paragraph in question, is one where you say you spoke to Farooq afterwards and he was upset and he was hurt, and he said if they'd wanted to do something like this, they could have involved us, we could have taken it to the assembly and done it, you suggest, by consensus. This has been interpreted to mean that he said, oh, jolly good, I'm so glad they've done the abrogation. Would you like to clarify they didn't mean that?
Nonsense, absolutely nonsense. There was not one single Kashmiri anywhere who supported the abrogation. And there are a lot of Indians who spoke against it. I did. I wrote against it. I spoke against it. And a lot of other Indians did. I remember our former Union Home Minister Chidambaram Saab speaking with a lot of passion in Parliament. And he referred to it as a monumental blunder, you know. So there's no question of any Kashmiri supporting it. Now, of course, as time has gone, you know, and the Supreme Court says everything is okay, so the Kashmiri probably feels that 370 is not going to come back, although he is still willing to fight for it. Coming to what happened between Farooq and me, I'd gone to see him. It was the 12th of February 2020. And he was very dejected. He was heartbroken. And he spoke very little that day. In fact, he spoke so little that ultimately I had to tell him, please let me speak to Safia, his daughter. And I spoke to Safia for half an hour. But what transpired between Dr. Saab and me was that he said, I mean, he couldn't just fathom or understand why, after being with India all his life, and his family and his father and everybody being with India, they had to lock him up. That was the crux of it. So he said, if they had to do this, why could they not take us into confidence? That's the crux of the whole thing.
I think you've clarified the issue sufficiently, and I tried pushing you on this the last time, so I'm going to try again. This controversy, as I said then, had a 2-day shelf life because it only lasted as long as people had not read the book. Once people have actually read the book, they'll know there's nothing like it in it. But given that it was so obviously a misquote and done, perhaps deliberately, why do you think it happened? I mean, it's put enormous pressure on your friends, on people in Kashmir like the Abdullahs who've known you for years, who've now been accused of all kinds of things. There's been a huge social media campaign in Delhi. A lot of familiar handles, people in the media will know what I mean, have quoted you as having broken the code of silence and told the truth. Obviously, there was some kind of design behind it, wasn't there?
Yeah, as I said, I don't know who started this deliberately. Somebody did, obviously, because that first story that came in the Hindustan Times wrecked everything, you know. It rattled everyone, and I think probably it shook Dr. Saab also. I don't know what frame of mind he's in, but obviously it disturbed him. But I can't say who's responsible, you know. It's very difficult to say. And I also don't want to name names here because I think this is a happy occasion and we'd all like it to end happily. So I don't want to name any names. But yes, I will say that somebody was responsible. I don't know who it is.
Okay. I think we've dealt with the elephant in the room, so let's talk about the book now. You said very few people have read the book. I have actually. I've read it quite closely, and it's an outstanding book. It's readable. It's in many ways, not, I think, completely objective, pain of praise to Farooq Abdullah, who you really seem to like. But it's also through your eyes and through the eyes of a person who saw everything that happened, the history of Kashmir over the last 30 years.
Yeah, that's right. You know, the point that you make that it's not very objective, I agree. I have always been partial to Dr. Saab. I have always been partial to the Abdullahs. And here's my Kashmiri friend sitting here. I've always been partial to Kashmir as well. You know, I feel for Kashmir. And I mean, it's got into my bloodstream. So what am I to do? And yeah, it can't be absolutely objective. The book is not a critique of Dr. Abdullah. It's in praise of Farooq Saab. I think people need to understand that. And if you haven't read the book, please read the book and then let us talk. And Yasho read that last para. I'd like to have people from the media discuss that last para with me. Why are you stuck on one sentence which starts with maybe? I think we don't understand the meaning of maybe.
Let's now talk about how Kashmir became, in a way, your life, and it has been your obsession. But it's interesting that though you had a very distinguished career in the Intelligence Bureau, you made the shift at a very senior level to being Secretary of RNAW And even though you were an outsider, far from being, many spies here will agree with this, far from being repelled by the organization, you were embraced by it. You were very successful RNAW secretary. Why do you think Kashmir has become your obsession in this varied career?
Because that's all I've done, and that's all I know, to be honest. I mean, I did.
It's not true. You were director, you were head of the RNAW. So
Yeah,
all you've
I
done.
was going to say that, there's a story there. I'm glad you brought it up. And when I shifted to the RNAW, most people thought I would carry officers from the IB to the RNAW. I didn't need to. The RNAW has wonderful officers. But I did carry Kashmir from the IB to the RNAW. And the IB was not very happy about it. So I told the DIB, who was a batchmate, friend, colleague, I said, I can't help it. As long as I'm around, Kashmir will remain with me. So it remained in the RNAW for that 2 years that I was there.
When you were in Bhopal, and I think Yashoda read that out, you were asked to come to Bhopal, from Bhopal to Kashmir. Did you realize then how much Kashmir was going to be part of your life when you made that first trip? Perhaps, as you've written in the book, with some trepidation.
Not at all. I had no idea at all what Kashmir was going to be like. I thought it'll be a good holiday, frankly. But it turned out to be terrible that winter of 89-90. Yeah. And I tell you something more. When I was asked to quit, it was thanks to Mr. Jagmohan that I was pushed out of Kashmir. And I was very happy to go. And I said, good riddance. Thank God I'm getting the hell out of it. I never thought I'd have anything more to do with Kashmir. And I came back to headquarters. And the chief had changed because the government had changed. So Mr. Joshi was the chief. And he said, Kashmir se aaye ho, deal with Pakistan. Counterintelligence. So I spent my time dealing with counterintelligence. Till again, Mr. Narayanan came back 11 months later. And he said, you've had enough of a holiday. Come back here and take charge of Kashmir. And after that, Kashmir has never left me. Or I've never left Kashmir.
Really? When you first went to Kashmir, you must have had some idea of what kind of man Farooq Abdullah was. What did you expect?
See, that's an interesting question. I didn't know what to expect. Two things had been told to me. One was by my chief minister when I was leaving Bhopal. Arjun Singh ji had just come back as chief minister. And he said to me, हमारे साथ कोई नाराजगी है क्या? मैं आया हूँ और तुम जा रहे हो. मैंने कहा सर आपके साथ क्या नाराजगी हो सकती है? अब राजा साहब यहाँ बैठे हैं, इनके साथ नाराजगी हो सकती है कभी? भोपाल के साथ नाराजगी हो ही नहीं सकती. 4 साल रहा मैं वहाँ. But he said one thing to me. He said, you're okay if you're going to Kashmir. Stay with Farooq. He is the only nationalist in Kashmir. And what my DIB said to me, Mr. Narayanan, he said, look, Rajiv is very concerned that Farooq stays on our side. I was a bit surprised because I thought Farooq was always on our side. So I came out of the DIB's room. I didn't want to have a further discussion with him. But his staff officer, unfortunately, is ill. He's not here. Very dear friend. Ratan Sehgal. I went to Ratan and I said, Ratan, what is the problem about Farooq? I thought he was a friend. He is. He said he is. But Rajiv is still concerned that he stays with us. And let me add here for everybody here, he has always stayed with us.
Yeah. You say that Arjun Singh Ji said to you he's the only naturalist in Kashmir. And we are now talking about before the so-called insurgency, for want of a better term, started. So was there already that kind of perception about Kashmiri politicians?
I don't know. I didn't go to Kashmir with any preconceived notion or anything. It was a posting I had to go. And it all began beautifully because that summer of 88 was great. Till, in July, a couple of bombs went off and I couldn't understand where did these bombs come from. There was a bomb in the post office and there was a bomb in the Srinagar club. And fortunately, nobody died. That's where it all started from there. And 88 was all right. I could still afford to go to Jammu for the winter. But 89 was 18, that winter of 89, 90 is unforgettable because it was really, really bad. There was nobody in Kashmir. Let me tell you this, everybody ran away. All central government officers in Kashmir ran away. And some of even our younger IB officers wanted to run away. I said, you can't run away. It's not possible. We can't run away. So we stayed through that winter, and it was, in the course of 3 weeks, we lost 4 officers were killed. So I was most of the time sending bodies down to Delhi. It was a terrible time. And every time I came down those steps, as Ken is here, he knows, and those who lived in 29 Gupkar, when you come down those steep steps, I think there are about 50 of them. And I used to think if there's a sniper there, or if there's somebody with a gun there, I'm a dead duck, I'm gone. But then we lived through it, and there were killings close to our place. Even on Gupkar Road, they were shooting. So it was a bad time. It was a very difficult time.
You were there, I mean, we keep referring to you as an observer, but you were there as a spy, basically. So did you sense what was going to happen? Had you intelligence about it?
Zilch, nothing at all.
Really? IB had no idea this was going to happen?
No idea.
How?
I think KP is sitting somewhere here, and I took over from him. And, when I went for a brief understudy with him for a couple of days, he gave me pink gin and told me good stories and told me about all the good people in Kashmir. He never once even mentioned about the so-called rigging of 87. So I thought, this is great. I've come for a holiday. It's only when I started meeting Kumar Sahab that I started learning Kashmir. Because he lived across the road, he taught me so much. And he also taught me, when I had to be booted out of Kashmir in 1990, he warned me. He said, they're gunning for you. I said, who's gunning for you? He said, you know who it is. Those 3 people are gunning for you. So he was right. He was always right. In fact, he was a great support, let me add, during that period of the kidnapping of Rubayya Saeed. He was always with us.
Sorry. These 3 people are out to get you. Which 3 people?
I've always avoided naming names, but I'll name them now.
All right.
It was very straight. There was, of course, Jagmohan Sahib, who didn't like my face, I think. He kept telling Delhi, this is Farooq's man, get him out of here. So I had to go, I knew I had to go. And, of course, there was Mufti Sahib also, the Home Minister. And then there was Arun Nehru. So these 3 said, isko nikalo. Ye harami hai. Farooq ka aadmi hai.
I often think back to that phase, and you were there, as were many people in the audience. If we'd handled the beginnings in 1989 better, if we hadn't had Jagmohan taking such a hard line, if we hadn't alienated the domestic political establishment, which was pro-India, regardless of what I just told you, would we be in this mess today?
Again, that's a very good question, because when I think back, at that time I couldn't think straight. But when I think back, I think we wasted that opportunity of 89, 90. You see, at that time what happened, there were just a handful of boys, these JKLF boys. They didn't know what they were doing except for killing people. They really didn't know what they were up to. And they were talking about Azadi. I remember meeting Yasin Malik, and he said, मैंने तुम्हारे साथ क्या बात करनी है? हम तो आज़ादी चाहते हैं. मैंने कहा भाई आज़ादी तो यहाँ मेरा बेटा बैठा हुआ है, वो भी चाहता है. अगर आपको आज़ादी मिल सके तो मैं भी कहूँगा हम क्या चाहते हैं आज़ादी. So there was that time, those times, I think maybe 6 to 8, 10 months, when we should have engaged with the JKLF. They were ready to talk, and they were ready to talk reasonably, because the whole thing was, they had gone, been trained, been coached by the ISI, and somehow they felt that once they start this little tamasha, the Pakistan army would come to support them. which was never going to happen, and it never happened. And my friend, the general from the other side, Asad Durrani, tells me, he says, even we were surprised by it, the support that militancy got, and that's why we supported it more. And that's why he says we created the Hurriyat, which was, their outfit, political outfit, to start with.
Well, I don't know about to start with or now, but given that you've now named Pakistan, do you believe that what happened in '89 was pretty much engineered by Pakistan?
No doubt about that. And it was engineered by Pakistan. So many things are engineered by Pakistan. But I'll again insist that we must talk to Pakistan. I mean, there is no other way.
No, I accept that's a separate
it was
matter. But my point is...
Sorry, my apologies.
Yeah,
it was engineered by Pakistan.
It was engineered? And what was the intention? Was it like a Bangladesh type situation that these chaps thought the Pakistan army...
Let me try and explain that.
Yeah.
You see, Pakistan, or the generals, and let's not forget that the General Zia was in command in those days. They had never forgotten 71. And somehow they felt that we have to take revenge for 71 in Kashmir. There is no better option. And when these boys came and got trained and were willing to fight, they thought, well, now let it go on. It suited Pakistan, but it didn't suit us. And we didn't understand that. There were very, very few officers. I remember, I tell you a little story now that you remind me. When Jagmohan came back as governor, that was the time when Farooq immediately put in his papers and said, I'm going, I'll go. And I'd kept telling Delhi, he will resign, he will go. Delhi didn't believe me and they didn't believe Farooq. So when Farooq actually resigned, I congratulated him. I said, you've done the right thing. A few days later, Jagmohan arrived in Srinagar. He first went to Jammu because it was winter and there were celebrations in Jammu, patakas and this, that and the other, a lot of celebrations. When he came to Srinagar, he called me. He still did call me. So I went to see him, and when I got there, he already had a guest there who was getting help. So I thought I should stay out. But I was told, you just walk in. Governor Saab says, just walk in. So I walked in and poor Joginder Singh was getting help. Tiger Joginder Singh, who became Director CBI. He was then, poor fellow, IG CRPF in Srinagar. And Jagmohan had hauled him up. What the hell did you do? Why did you have to arrest 350 kids from downtown? Now, how will I deal with Kashmir? So in the whole thing, he asked me a lot of questions, a lot of things. I said, sir, Kashmir has changed. It's not the same as when you left 6 months ago. This is a different Kashmir. So he says, क्या करना चाहिए? I said, दो ही रास्ते हैं. या डंडा लगा लीजिए, या बात कर लीजिए. कहने लगे, मैं बात करना चाहता हूँ. मैंने कहा, सर, किससे बात करेंगे? आज शायद आपके साथ कोई बात ही ना करे. So anyway, he said, I know so and so and so and so and so and so. I said, करिए जरूर बात करिए. When I walked out of there, the only advisor who had come up with him was Ved Marwa. So Ved Marwa followed me out and he said, क्या बकवास कर रहे हो? हाँ? बात करेंगे? अब इनको डंडा लगाएंगे. मैंने कहा लगाओ सर डंडा, जितना मर्जी डंडा लगाओ. A couple of years later, when I met Mr. Ved Marwa, he was a wonderful person, I must say. I never worked with him, but he was wonderful in everything I saw. I think Delhi police will bear me out. So he said to me, now your time has come. Now is the time to talk. I said, now we are already talking.
Coming back to Jagmohan in '89, there was a background to Jagmohan and what he had done the last time he'd been there. So to appoint someone like Jagmohan in that very sort of tense situation was pretty much a way of getting rid of Farooq. Didn't they realize that the civilian political establishment would collapse?
No, that was the whole idea. The whole idea of appointing Jagmohan was to get rid of Farooq. Now the point here is, and it's very interesting, that it was VP Singh's government, you know. He went and met the Prime Minister. He met his close friend, George Fernandez. And he came back to Srinagar and he said, I met whoever I can in Delhi. They have assured me they will not send Jagmohan. I've told them send anybody but Jagmohan. But he says, I still think they'll send Jagmohan. So he was right. His instincts were superb, you know. Dr. Saab knew everything. He knew what was going to happen. He knew that he was not going to get that vice presidency that he had been promised. He knows everything.
I was going to come to that. So when you say they, who sent Jagmohan? Arun Nehru?
Yeah, the same three.
The people you were reluctant to name. All right. This one, it's not really covered in your book, but there's one event that happened then, which is pretty much defined, at least in public discourse, the BJP's attitude to Kashmir, and that is the exodus of the Kashmiri Pandits. What do you think happened?
No, I was there when the exodus started, or most of the exodus. In fact, some friends had approached me. One of them is I was hoping he would be here, a prominent Kashmiri Pandit whom I have quoted in the book. He came to me desperately saying, we have to go. I said, where are you wanting to go? He said, we have to get out of the valley. I said, cool it, Ban Sahab, kar denge bandobast. He said, no, I have to go today. There was so much desperation among the Pandits at that time. There was a scare. You see, there was that terrible killing of Judge Ganju on Hari Singh High Street. And unfortunately, nobody came for a few hours even to retrieve his body. He bled to death after he was shot. So Ashok Bhan came to me and said, please get me out of here. So I said, okay, take my car. What about your belongings? He said, I don't care. I just want to go with my family. I said, take my car, go to Jammu. So it was that kind of situation at that time. It was bad. It was pretty bad. And again, Kumar Sahab was a witness to it. He knows. But, here there's one thing, because a lot of blame has been put on Jagmohan. I don't think Jagmohan really was responsible for the exodus. He was happy with the exodus. Because he
was happy?
He was very happy. Of course.
Why?
Because if the Pandits had remained, then, there was a lot of killing going on in Jagmohan's time, second time also. Then more Pandits would have been killed, and then Jagmohan would have got the blame for it. Earlier, we were getting the blame for it. So it was that kind of situation. It was a pretty bad situation.
You also mentioned in passing the Rubaiyat Saeed kidnapping. Now, there are different views about what happened and whether we should have given in and released the people they asked for. But I remember Arun Nehru said to me, I think it may even have been record, that it was never serious. Food was going from Mufti's house to her, which I'm sure was an exaggeration. But he certainly had a very cynical view of that kidnapping and what it was going to achieve. What do you remember?
Yeah, these JKLF boys quite often didn't know what they were up to or what they were doing. Here's the master of JKLF, one of the founder members here. But I'm not talking about him. He's a very wise man. He's become a sage now. Sage Hashim. But these youngsters actually didn't know what they were up to. So they were planning some kind of thing, and they actually wanted to kidnap Farooq's daughter, Safia. So they had done a recce of Gubkar and all. And then they found there's too much security there. And getting away also, even if they had kidnapped her, how do they get away from the security in Gubkar? So then somebody got this brainwave, realized that Mufti's daughter, Mufti had just been appointed Home Minister 4 or 5 days earlier, that she goes to this women's hospital, Lal Ded, and she comes out of there at about 3:30 in the afternoon to go home, and she goes in one of those 4-5 wheeler, those putt-putts. And so they recceed that, and they picked her up one afternoon and took her to Sopore. And what I can say about that kidnapping thereafter, after she'd been kidnapped, everybody got into the business of negotiating. It was, it was a case study for how not to negotiate. Because there was the chief secretary there, Musa Raza, and me. We were the two who started this whole thing. And after meeting with the father of one of these JKLF boys, we were convinced that at the most, actually what they wanted was that one of their colleagues was in hospital with a gun injury, and they wanted his release. And that was it. But because so many people became negotiators, including a judge, and Farooq was very angry at all that, but he was helpless because they were all friends of Mufti Sahib. So everybody who was a friend of Mufti Sahib became a negotiator. And so instead of releasing one person, we ended up releasing 5. And Farooq didn't agree with it. He wrote a dissenting note to the governor.
In fact, even Rajiv Gandhi, I remember, opposed it, and he was criticized by various members of the government who said, supposing it had been Priyanka who'd been kidnapped, would he have said the same thing? So within India, there was a great will to not give in. That was clearly not true in Kashmir.
You see, the point here is, it was not Rajiv Gandhi. Actually, this is VP Singh's government at that point of time.
Yeah, Rajiv was in opposition and was...
Yeah, fair enough, sorry. And you see, it was VP Singh's government. And as time went by, she was kidnapped on the 8th and released on the 30th. There were 5 very days full of tense for us. We never left that office. And the whole problem was that she was the Home Minister's daughter.
Yeah.
So at the end of it, I think the government got tired, everybody, including Arun Nehru, and they went to the Prime Minister and said, enough is enough. Let's release whoever we have to release. Get over with it. And, on the last night, I think it was about midnight, that I got a call. And Musa was sitting with me from Mr. Session, who was then Cabinet Secretary. He said, okay, now, you know how he spoke. Okay, now, tomorrow 2 ministers and the DIB are coming. It's been decided. Whoever has to be released will be released. And we have to get the Home Minister's daughter back. Finished. So that was the end of it. And so I said to Musa, I said, okay. We were told the flight was coming at 5:30 in the morning, so I went home, had a shave. And as I was going to the airport, it suddenly struck me that Farooq's house was on the way. So I stopped there and asked the guard. I said, Dr. Saab so rahe honge. कहने लगा नहीं अभी उठे हैं नमाज के लिए. So I spoke to him from downstairs, from the guard room. I said, sir, I'm just going to the airport. He said, whatever for? I said, these 2 ministers are coming. So he said, you don't have to go for ministers. I said, no, I don't have to, but the DIB is also coming. So he said, okay, then bring them straight home to my place. And that's what happened. I picked them up. There was Mr. Gujral and Arif Muhammad. And Gujral sir was very reluctant to go to the Chief Minister's house. He wanted to go to a dark bungalow, have a wash and whatever, freshen up. I said, sir, all the freshening up will be done at the Chief Minister's house now. We have to go straight there. It's his order. I will take you there, and then you decide whether you want to have a wash or not. So we went there. Farooq was waiting. He took us down to his hammam. It was pretty cold, 13th of December. Served everybody tea and said, now tell them the story. So your question, and this is what Farooq has enjoyed. Not so much in this case, but more so in the case of the hijacking of 814. When I went to him, he said, "You're here again."
I'm going to come to 814 in a minute. I just want to talk about one other thing. which is things then got really bad in Kashmir. Farooq went off to England. Did you expect that to happen? Did you think it was going to get that bad?
No, of course not. I didn't. I hardly knew Kashmir at that time. I just possibly been there just a year. And I knew nothing. To be honest, like you were inquiring about, intelligence had totally collapsed. Nobody was willing to talk to us, you know. Even old friends had parted company. Nobody spoke. It took a long, long time to revive that whole intelligence setup. And I couldn't do it in my time, I must admit. It had totally collapsed. So we knew nothing.
During that period, you went to England and you went and met Farooq. Tell us about that.
No, that was not. I went to England in 1993. This was one of those, liaison meetings with MI5 and MI6, and we had gone there. There were about 4 of us who'd gone. So we were there for 3 days. I remember going and seeing the Phantom of the Opera also. But I had a free day, so I called up Dr. Saab, knowing he was living somewhere around London. And I said, I'm in London. Why don't you come to London? He said, I'll come to London, but I want you to come home first. Come and see our place. So I asked the High Commission for a taxi, and I drove to their little house, Southend-on-Sea in Essex. And Dr. Saab and Mrs. Abdullah took me to the club for lunch. We came back, and this is very interesting. Mrs. Abdullah went up. She was totally apolitical, didn't want to hear any political gossip. She went up to her room, and Farooq said, sit down, and I want to introduce you to somebody important. And he made a phone call to this gentleman sitting here.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said, you must talk to Hashim Qureshi. He will be useful to you. And indeed, he's been very, very useful to us.
So that's how it all started. Eh?
That's how it all started.
You say that he lived pretty simply, relatively modestly in England, and there was no visible security. But surely he was then pretty high on the hit list of militants, etc.
It's interesting. They lived in a very, very small, modest flat. That was that was, if I might call her Molly, that was Molly's way of living, And Farooq adjusted to it. He adjusted to whatever his wife wanted. He was, again, been a very good husband, I must say. So I asked him this question. I said, sir, I don't see any security here. He says, these guys have their own way of watching me. In any case, they've given me a number. If I'm in desperation, I can call that number anytime. So he was quite confident that he had enough security, but there was nothing to be seen there.
What do you mean?
I mean, there was nothing visible. There was no security, not like our security, Or not
I was about to say that. It's pretty much the opposite of 18 commandos with automatic weapons.
Absolutely. Or even in Srinagar today, where you have a policeman every 100 yards,
814. Now that you brought it up, let's finally come to that. Now, you've been immortalized on the small screen in a not very good show about the 814 thing. So tell us what really happened.
Yeah, 814. You want the whole story or my conversation?
Just the bit. I mean, you were Secretary RNAW at that time,
That's right? That's right.
So the show actually begins with an RNAW chap fighting out in Kathmandu, etc. Was any of that true? Did you have information about it?
Nothing. Not true. Also, that, there's another story linked to that about the officer in Kathmandu. I don't see him here. Shashi Tomar was then, he was unfortunately stuck in that aircraft. So the story went around because he was, Nikhil Saab yahan baithe, his brother-in-law, and also, more importantly, NK's brother-in-law. NK and I were then, close because in the PMO.
Yeah.
And so the story went around that everybody was released because of Shashi Tomar. It's absolute rubbish. Nothing of the sort. Nobody knew that Shashi Tomar was on that flight. There's another story now that my friend Nikhil is sitting here, that, we made a hash of it in that crisis management group, let me say, because nobody could take a decision. And then somebody said that the real blame should come on DG NSG. I said, what rubbish? What has DG NSG got to do with this?
Well, we could have stopped the plane from taking off, no? When it landed in Punjab.
Yeah, the only opportunity really was in Amritsar, where it was for 50 minutes or so. And the DG Punjab at that time, again a friend and a batchmate, Sarabjit said, I have commandos. They're Punjab police commandos. They're not NSG commandos. And if you want, we can storm the plane. But I can't assure you how many killings there'll be. And he told me later on that his own Chief Minister, Prakash Singh Badal, had said, I don't want to see bloodshed in Amritsar. The crux of it all is nobody wanted to see bloodshed. And it's just as well that we didn't see bloodshed.
But this is the Vajpayee government. You had Brijesh Mishra. You had fairly decisive, you had Mr. Advani. You had fairly decisive people. Why were we so indecisive? Why do you say that characterized our handling of the hijacking?
Yeah, I'm talking of the NSG. Now, I mean, the
crisis management group.
Yeah, not the NSG. The crisis management group. Now, Brijesh Mishra and Advaniji were mere visitors to the crisis management group. One came and left, and the other came and left. They were not there. It was the cabinet secretary and 4 or 5 of us others. Lesser mortals, yeah.
And you guys couldn't come to a decision about stopping the plane in Amritsar?
No, everybody agreed. Now this again is interesting, and I'm equally to blame as anybody else, that yes, the plane should be stopped in Amritsar. Well, how do you stop the plane in Amritsar? So, at one stage, my friend, the DIB at that time, Shamal Datta, rings up his batchmate Sarabjit in Chandigarh and says, "Rok do usko, tire puncture kar do." So Sarabjit said to me, "What did Shamal think? This was a bicycle that we could puncture?" उस तरह की कहानी थी. It was a sad show, but that's how it is.
Now, Farooq enters the story at the end when they submit a list of demands, ask for many people to be released. You guys refuse. Finally, it's whittled down to 3 people. One of them, or 2 of them, I think, were in Kashmir jails, right? Yeah. So, tell us how Latram was released and what happened.
Yeah, my colleague, Mr. C.D. Sahai is here. I can't find him now in this crowd. And, okay, why are you sitting right at the back, sir? So anyways, he was sent as one of the negotiators, along with Ajit Doval and Nachal Sandhu and Anand Arni from the RNAW. These were our main Pakistan experts and negotiators. So they were getting desperate in Kandahar. If Delhi should take a decision. I mean, enough is enough. And the Taliban was telling them that either decide or get out of here. If you can't make up your mind, then get out of here. We are losing patience now. Everybody was losing patience. So I remember I got a call that morning. I knew, and my friend Ajit Doval also knew, that was the crucial morning, the 30th of December, when the CCS met. I got a call just before I went into the CCS. I got a call from Ajit, and he said, "Please, आज कुछ करवा दीजिए. अब सब परेशान हैं, सब थक गए हैं, and ये लोग अब हमें यहाँ रहने नहीं देंगे." So it was a pretty desperate kind of situation, and I felt for all these officers in Kandahar. So we went in for the meeting, and it was decided there that, okay, we'll release these 3 people and get our people back. So once that decision was taken, somebody suddenly realized that 2 out of 3 are in jails in Jammu and Kashmir. So Farooq has to be taken into confidence. So Jaswant Singh said, looked around the room and said, "Kaun jayega wahan?" The government was not in Srinagar, it was in Jammu. So Brajesh turned and said, "Ye jayega or kaun jayega?" So there's a line in my book that when they remember Farooq, they remember me. Anyway, that won't happen in the future possibly. So then Brajesh said, "Ye jayega." So I told Mr. Jaswant Singh, I said, "मैं तो खुशी से जाऊंगा, but आप phone कर दीजिए Chief Minister साहब को." So he rang up Farooq and said, "Dulat is coming." I went back to the office and said, "Sir, I'm coming." He said, "I know you're coming. You might as well stay with me." I said, "Okay, I'll come and stay with you." And I took my friend Jaidev along. Jaidev was, we worked together, Jaidev was here. And I said, "If you want to watch some fun, come along. Come on the flight to Jammu." And he came. And Farooq was sitting on his dining table when we entered. It was the month of Ramzan. So he said, "Let me go and say my prayers and I'll come back." And he went out and came back after about 10 minutes, had his juice and dates and whatever, and then said, "Come into that room now, the drawing room, the bigger room." And then the tamasha started. Left, right, center, Bevkoof, ye, wo. Dr. Saab enjoys theatre. He enjoys creating theatre. And you know, he's had, let's be fair to him, he's had very few opportunities of running down Delhi. So he didn't want to let go of this opportunity. It was theatre, and it went on for 2.5 hours. After about an hour, Jaidev couldn't bear it anymore. He said, "I'm going for dinner. I have to leave." He had seen enough of the tamasha. It went on and went on. And at one stage, then Dr. Farooq got serious. He said, "Okay, you want that fellow, you can take him." What was his name? Hafiz Saeed. But this rascal I will not let go of. That Latram, he said, he's a Kashmiri killer. He's killed so many people here. Isko main nahi chhodne wala. I said, "Sir, you're absolutely right. But the whole thing is either it's 3 or nothing." So he said, "Then I will resign." I said, "Chaliye fir, mere ko saath le chaliye." So we went, the two of us, in this jeep at about 10 o'clock at night, woke up the governor.
Who was also a former spy, right?
Oh, obviously, only spies can do this job.
But hang on a minute, do you really believe that Farooq would have resigned? You know, eventually he didn't obviously believe
Obviously,
that.
he's not good. He was not good.
Was it theatre or he intended to resign?
No, this is all theatre, but it was good, very good theatre. It was genuine theatre. So we walked in, and he said to Gary, he said,
This is Gary Saxena,
yes.
former head of RNW, who was
Absolutely,
governor.
absolutely.
Who was governor there.
Sorry, I shouldn't refer to him as Gary, yeah. Mr. Saxena.
Yeah.
So we walked in and Farooq said, I'm resigning. I've come to resign, sir. These fellows are making a big mistake, this, that, flana, dimka, and so Gary Saab, being Gary Saab, said, calm down, calm down. Dr. Saab, you're a big man, you're a brave man. You can't throw in the towel like this. Sit, relax. And out came the black label, and the rest is history.
How long did it take to get him to come around?
He had already come around.
Okay. Well,
Once Gary had said, "You're a big man, you can't throw in the towel." He had come around. The black label I got was as a bonus, you know.
we had no choice, you think, but to release those prisoners and return.
There was no choice. Once the aircraft left Amritsar, and there also when I think back in retrospect, it may have been a bad choice, but that was the only choice in Amritsar. After that, we had no choice. And you know, when the UPA government came to power, soon after all this, they made a huge issue of this, that we will never give in to terror.
Yeah.
And Jaswant Singh, I must say to his credit, stood up and say, there will always be situations when you will give in to terror. And I want to add one thing here, that everybody, when in trouble, everybody gives in to terror, including the Israelis. For every hostage that they want now, they have to release 200 Palestinians. So what are they talking about? Who says they don't compromise? Who says they don't give it? Everybody gives it. The Americans give in, the Israelis give in, everybody gives in when they are in trouble.
We're coming to the end, but I want to talk a little bit about the subject of the book. You've described him as a man who likes theatre. You've described him as a man with very strong and good political instincts. But he's also a very brave man not to have taken what he's done.
Absolutely. You know, he's as a politician, I think he's one of the best. You know, I have written there, he's the Sultan of politics. And like, there's a youngster here who told me, ye to baap ka bhi baap hai, meaning Sheikh Sahab ka bhi baap hai. And it's a fact, you know. Actually, I think when history is written, Dr. Farooq will come out bigger than the Sheikh. Because the Sheikh had it all good. I'm not saying spending 12 or 13 years in jail is good. But he had Mahatma on his side. He had Padaji on his side. And you know the story. When ultimately the Sheikh gets released, he goes comes here to Delhi and stays with the Prime Minister. Yeah. And as a guest of Panditji. Now, will that happen today?
If you had to define Farooq in one sentence, which is difficult for history, how would you define him?
I would say as I said, the finest politician, the greatest politician, the tallest leader of Kashmir, a wonderful friend, and the most lovable patriarch in that family. That family is broken. I spoke to both the sisters to invite them for this launch. And I told Dr. Saab, I said, I'm going to speak to Suraya and I'm going to speak to Khalida ji. And he said, they won't come. I said, sir, my business is